Portions of this show are recorded. Strap in and be prepared.
You just heard Baby J about 3 minutes give his entire A to Z on what was going on. I didn't interrupt you.
I don't even I got to everything, honestly.
No, you didn't get to everything.
Interesting guests.
Kelly Graves, Mike Parker, Josh Pate, Melissa Lombardi, Yogi Roth, who said that Justin and I are smart.
Sharp opinions.
I think Dan Lanning's sitting in his office going, you know what, fine, give us the toughest road to win the national championship. That's what it should be.
I think that this team is going to go as far as Malik Murphy takes them. There's a lot to like about this offense if he's who we think he could be.
And some smiles.
Is this thing on?
Is this thing working? No, that's why you got to do this. You got to go.
Hello?
Hello? Testing, testing,
it's like the little
testing.
girl in Nemo where she's tapping on the glass.
Fishy! Fishy, wake up, Fishy!
It's Danny Havel.
We have to be more specific. We have a lot of pickle things going on, apparently.
Justin Grossweiner.
I've been wrong before, but that's what I think.
Danny and Justin starts now on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Sitting in for Danny today, it's Goops, Steve Mims.
Welcome into the Danny and Justin show on a post-Oregon Penn State Monday. Justin, it is week 3 of Kenny Chesney at the Sphere, but the run is coming to an end. I think Danny will be back Friday and lead you as fearless leader. Will be back, but we will finish up strong here this week. Thanks for having me back in on a week that the shows should pretty much write themselves, I would think.
Yeah, I would say that this is, I'm just going to say it, the easiest show I've ever had to prepare for.
Well, now we're screwed.
Well,
Everything's going to go wrong. Everything's going to go wrong.
I hope not. No, I still prepared, but the preparation was easy.
Yes,
it was easy watching these games, and it's just a fun week. I mean, baseball playoffs are starting tomorrow. The NBA training camps, I believe, are underway as of starting this week. And then, of course, this weekend you had a decent football game that was on. Of course, the Sunday night football game.
Yeah,
no, I'm just
there
kidding.
you go.
No, Oregon
Cowboys
obviously
fan
big win.
me and Packers fan you. I figured, well, one of these is going to be throwing the other one off, and it turns out we just go our separate ways and call it a 40-40 tie. So.
Yeah, we the Micah Parsons and Cowboys Jerry Jones revenge game just ended up being neutral, I guess.
Yeah, it didn't really turn out. So, but the Saturday game was everything we thought it would be. We talked about it last week. We had 1 million guests, and the game lived up to the hype, and that's cool. You know, I think as it went along, it started a little slow. Obviously, a fantastic finish, and I think it was the battle of 2 top 6 teams that it was built out to be.
Yeah, the entire time watching this game, before the ending even, I just was thinking the entire time how these are 2 of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
I know that the narrative after Penn State has now lost this game, that it's still, Penn State can't win, and it's the same James Franklin-led team and all that stuff. But I don't know. I just was watching this game, and I think that Penn State really figured something out at the end. I think Oregon got a little bit lucky that there was as little time as there was in that fourth quarter. But obviously, I'm not going to take anything away from their victory. Huge win for the Ducks. And you want to just talk about an impressive win in basically every single facet. I mean, besides that fourth quarter little collapse, I guess you could say, which in my opinion kind of turned into a positive because you still win the game. And that, I think, is a huge just character and building block moment for this team. I mean, now the expectations are sky high. Dante Moore is going to be obviously in the Heisman conversation. But this team just won it in the trenches. I mean, they did everything you want to see a team do if they're going to be a championship-level team. They were definitely not affected by the environment almost at all. I think there was maybe one false start in the beginning of the game. But after that, it just basically looked like they were cool, calm, and collected. And this team just has it. I mean, this team has the talent. We wanted to see how it looked in an environment like this. And, I mean, is it an A+? I mean, it has to be.
Yeah. It was an impressive one. Like I say, to go in there, we've talked about before. Dan Lanning always hits the high notes, and I tell you what, man, he led his team, took his team in there. You know, basically said that the whiteout was going to be a canvas they could paint a masterpiece on, and if it wasn't a masterpiece, it's certainly all that matters in a game like that is getting out with the win. We all wondered about how Dante Moore would handle pressure, and he certainly did plenty of that as well. So yeah, everything Oregon wanted to accomplish, they were able to do. And we will spend most of today talking about that game. We are also going to get to the Beavs, who on Friday night had maybe an exact 180 of the Oregon performance, where they stunk it up, unfortunately. And for them, another late one with some special teams meltdowns knocks them to 0-5 with the loss to Houston. Our guest today in the next segment is going to be John Warren, the judge from radio up in Corvallis. And so we'll talk about the Beavs with John Warren coming up at 2:20 and get more into that also in our last segment. But Yeah, for Oregon, and we talk about the narratives, they're going to be there. And I thought it was funny. They asked James Franklin, that's the narrative, or he said, that's the narrative that we can't win these. And then
he said that it wasn't even a narrative.
That's
it's
what
just
he
factual.
said, and I give him credit. That he then came back and said it's not. It's that. My thing for Penn State was, and again, I don't want to put this all on Penn State either, but I just find it that like the whole offseason was, they got the quarterback to come back, they got both running backs to come back, they got these 3 guys in the transfer portal. And then they have the home crowd and the whiteout, and it felt to me like they were the team really conservative at the start. It looked like he just wanted to kind of run the ball and keep the ball away from Oregon, which I think is kind of what Oregon wanted them to do as well. You don't really want them to open it up. A big play or two can get the crowd into it. Instead, almost from the right away, Oregon was playing great run defense and kept the crowd out of it. Eventually, the crowd starts booing, getting a little bit restless. I just didn't understand. Like I say, and I pay a lot of attention to college football in the offseason. It felt like everything was... got Penn State's done what Michigan did 2 years ago and what Ohio State last year in terms of bringing all these guys back, but loading it up for this year. And it feels like if you've got that kind of firepower on offense, and maybe Aller's not as great as, the people have talked about him being this and that, but if you're going to have your third-year starting quarterback, the best duo of returning running backs in the country, and 3 transfer portal receivers who come in and not open it up in a home game in your whiteout against the team that you need to beat and play really conservative there. Again, I'm not a James Franklin basher. I'm not a guy who looks at coaches who win 10 games every year and say you need to fire him because he's not doing enough. He's probably going to be in the playoff again this year.
Probably.
They knock off Ohio State or Indiana. They're going to be back in there at 10-2, and he never loses to teams he should beat. He doesn't ever beat the teams he can't beat.
Exactly.
But he never loses those, so he'll be 10-2 again. And again, for people who think that's enough to be fired for, have at it. Good luck trying to find a coach who's going to come into Penn State and win 10 games every year. But I just didn't understand. Again, for a guy, this is the year I would think where if you're him, you feel comfortable finally let your offense go early on, take some shots, try to get, if you can get that crowd into it, get Oregon on their back feet, you have some advantages. And I just felt like from the start, they were just trying to, almost run clock and try to grind Oregon down and make sure they didn't make the big mistakes, almost like they didn't trust their quarterback to not make mistakes, which in the end he did make a big one. But I just didn't get that. I thought if there's every year, if you're James Franklin, you got to just be pedal to the metal, let's go. And if we don't do it, that's fine. But we brought all these guys back to have a chance to do this. And I was surprised that in that one there, that it just looked like they were basically just trying to run conservative, control the clock, and see if they could escape a whiteout situation at home with a win.
And the disappointing thing, and I can think that it's totally valid for if you're a Penn State fan, this has got to be utterly disappointing because they had every advantage coming into this game. They played 3 cupcakes before this game. They had a bye week. They played it at home. And they had an opportunity to beat a team that would change that factual narrative for James Franklin, and they weren't able to do it. Oregon came out there, and you mentioned that they were just trying to run the ball, and Oregon was the more physical team all game. You mentioned the duo of running backs as well. You know who I think the best duo of running backs was? It was Deerhill Jr. and whoever they paired with him. Basically. Because I think, by the way, they should stop messing around. Deerhill Jr. is the best running back they have, I think. Yeah. And we'll see what they do going forward. Noah Whittington wasn't great today. I think so. He's going to be a huge part of this offense, but that's kind of an aside. This Penn State team, I think, opened it up when they got down 14 in the fourth quarter. They finally got aggressive, and you could see a little bit of that potential. I think we saw the flash. Honestly, there was at one point I thought Penn State was going to win this game. They got up 7 points in overtime, and Oregon's got to score a touchdown. They get to a fourth down, and actually, did they get to a fourth down? I think I think they did. And they just were able to kind of come through every single time. And for Penn State, I don't think they got any sacks. I think Oregon did a great job. That offensive front, they just look like the more physical team. Yeah. And that's just what's crazy about this game is that you have just this young Oregon team who has all this inexperience, even an experienced quarterback, and they look like the more comfortable team.
Yeah. And I think Yogi Roth, who we had on the show early in the week last week, hit it on the nail with Dante Moore. Hey, I don't know if this is going to be, 350 yards, 80% completions, but I feel like Dante Moore is the kind of guy who can go in and win there. He did it, again, some hits and some misses, but 200 and some odd yards passing, good running on some fourth downs when they really needed it. I thought that Dante Moore, and he chatted afterwards a little bit about what it was kind of like for him in this moment. We all kind of wondered and questioned what's it going to be like. He's, hasn't been in that moment yet. It's only his 10th career start, 9th career start. And Dante kind of lived up to the expectations, and he addressed that afterwards.
Yeah, I kind of just went back to my freshman year when I played at Utah. My first time playing at Utah, electric environment. I had a lot of mistakes that game. And one thing I was, thinking about is I wasn't confident. I wasn't confident in the game plan just as a player, not knowing everything. You know, of course, as a true freshman, 17 years old, there's a lot that you got to, handle as a quarterback on that offense. But overall, I feel like this week, man, we practiced so hard as a whole team. Even the defense, they made sure they pushed me this week. The environment playing, you had some practices in the Mo. Make sure you blast the volume super loud to get ready for this environment. So I feel like overall, playing on the road can be very difficult, especially when you're far away from home. Travels can be, a little different, but we came out with the win. It's a blessing, man.
And we've now gone from the Dante Moore, can he handle this job? Can he do this? To
is he a starter?
To now it's, I heard Todd McShay today talking about he's clearly his number one, quarterback in the draft if he comes out this year. Pete Nakos from On 3 has him on top of his Heisman poll. We're hearing now all of a sudden we've gone from, at the 5 games at UCLA, it was, can he handle the Oregon job? Does Oregon need to, does he have the job over Austin Novosad? Was it really a battle? And now all of a sudden he could be the number one pick in the draft and he could be the Heisman Trophy winner. So maybe that's the next evolution is Dante Moore. Early on it was a lot of doubters proving the doubters wrong. Now you're trying to prove the critics right. And maybe now it's sort of, if you have a bad game, even if you win, suddenly the folks are going to come in and be throwing the pitchforks and, he doesn't look like this, he doesn't look like that.
He's a fraud.
So now it's the hunted to the, hunting to the hunted one. But it'll be interesting to see. Like I say, I think we all know, though, that Dante Moore is, rank him where you want. One of the better quarterbacks in the country, certainly the right guy to be running this Oregon offense. I think the challenge now moving forward is teams are going to be aiming for him a little bit more, and I think teams are going to have a little bit more film on him. There wasn't a whole lot of film early on. I don't know how much they had to show in those first 4 games. Be a little bit more out there now, and now it's just about him continuing to evolve in this offense when people have high expectations instead of what he had to do for basically the first 9 or 10 starts was try to show people that he earned the spot that he got.
Yeah, and I think for Dante and just this Oregon team in general, it just feels like kind of a new era, I think, after this game. There was just a perception coming into the year of just like it was Penn State's game to lose, I think. Everybody kind of had that as a loss for Oregon. We had all the predictions of how I think Oregon's going to do. Well, I think they're going to go 11-1, lost to Penn State.
Yeah.
I think now that this is a new era, we have to start thinking about Oregon as a team that's going to be competitive every single year. I think we have to start thinking about them as a championship-level team, even though they haven't actually won that championship. I think that's just one of those things where there's a little bit of luck involved. They have to obviously have some things break their way. But this program, year in and year out now, under Dan Lanning, I mean, it's a Heisman contender quarterback. It's a top 5 team that's playing some of the biggest games, and it was in the first year in the Pac-12, but now it's going to be in the Big Ten every year. I mean, this is going to be an every year thing, it seems like, where you're going to have a quarterback that's a Heisman contender, you're going to have a team that's competitive, that's playing in the top games, and I think that we're going to start to see them as a team that's in the running for a national championship every single year. I don't see why that wouldn't happen.
Yep. We talked about what Dante did and getting into, one of the big things that worked for Oregon was they had 5 fourth down conversions in the game. According to James Crepea of the Oregonian, they converted the 5 of the 7, which is the most fourth down conversions in a game for Oregon for over the past 10 years. But 2 of those were on runs by Dante Moore, where he went back, looked like, and made the run, including that one with the game on the line in the first overtime period. Dan Lanning discussed a little bit of what went into planning for and then executing those fourth downs.
I thought our offensive staff did an unbelievable job game plan. We had a false start on the first fourth down. Otherwise, we would have converted that one. We had a great play call. But we went through the Rolodex today, and what did we convert? I mean, we had 5 of 7, fourth downs, so every one of those fourth downs mattered. And, 2 of those we didn't get. But we were going to be aggressive in this game. They were 3 for 3 on fourth down. So those extra 2 for us mattered in a big way in this game. And our coaches, I thought, did a great, we didn't just go to our normal bag, right? We stepped outside of the box and went to some stuff we hadn't ran this season, and it ended up being winners for us.
And one of the ones they didn't convert was the last play regulation when rather than punt, Dante Moore just threw the ball out of bounds to avoid. So basically it's 5 out of 6. But again, we talked about this last week too, that those fourth down decisions were going to come to define Dan Lanning again. Again, 2 years ago at Washington, they go for it, it doesn't work out. The talk is, hey, Dan Lanning blew this one. He went for it on fourth down, couldn't convert this and that. If the Jordan Davison one that they score on to go up 14, if they get stuffed there, Penn State's got the ball, comes back down, scores, has time. Again, this could have been the same thing. I credit Dan Lanning, who clearly has no concern what the media is saying about his fourth downs, and is just going to keep doing it his way. And it worked out here and got through. But big time credit for again 5 out of 7 on the fourth downs and on the road. And again, you think On the road, you're going to be a little more conservative. It seemed like the roles reversed. It felt to me like Oregon, and I heard Dan Lanning say afterwards, too, that, hey, normally Penn State's a 7-point, that being that home field advantage equals about 7 points, but he didn't feel like it was any. And I think some of that, again, goes back to James Franklin not being the aggressor and being sort of the passive one, whereas Dan Lanning came in new. Hey, we need to be aggressive with this. If we just try to kind of hang close and, do this and that, we're going to end up in a situation where it's, the other team's going to have some chances to go ahead and they're going to have some momentum in the fourth quarter. It did end up being that way, but not because of a lack of aggressiveness from Oregon. And then when it comes back down to it at the end, Oregon's aggressive, and we saw that in the overtime as well. So I give Dan Lanning big credit. Like I say, in a game like that with all the eyes on you, those fourth down calls are the type of things that the Monday morning quarterbacks like us either come in and say, oh, my gosh, I can't believe he went for it there and it cost him the game. Or on the other hand, you come in and say, man, that dude knew what he was doing.
Absolutely. And I think the thing to me that makes it the most impressive is that end of the quote there. He said, hey, we were willing to do things that we hadn't done yet. Yep. They're willing to go outside of their comfort zone and their box in the bag, as they say, to be able to find the right play and the right call and do the right thing. And, there was, tons of questions coming into this game. On Saturday, Brian was saying, hey, why are they going down on Friday? That's something you could maybe sit there and say, that's a little bit different than you might expect on a game that's a Saturday night, of course. So the willingness to be able to adapt and to try different things and to constantly be reevaluating yourself, I think that's what's so impressive about Dan Lanning. And they're each week, and we heard a little bit, I'm sure we're going to get the Ducks versus them tonight, talking about the stacking cuts, basically. That was clearly the theme. Thousand cuts. Yeah. Reminds me of that great French film, A Thousand Blows or whatever it is. But basically, I think that that's, to me, I think if you could find the essence of what Dan Lanning is, it's the willingness to each week sort of kind of reinvent yourself to find whatever the best thing that they need to do to win. And it's worked so far, except for one game against Ohio State.
Yep. And then in the end, it came down to Dylan Thieneman, who's another new guy, a guy who played against Penn State. He'd been in the Big Ten at Purdue. And as Oregon fans are watching, and Oregon goes ahead in the double overtime, Penn State's got another chance. And Oregon, and it all lines up. Drew Aller can be the hero, or it can be the second straight loss that he's thrown an interception as his last pass of the game. Ends up being picked up by Dylan Thieneman, who discussed that one after the game as well.
Yeah, that last play I was just pushing through the zone. I saw the tight end on the wheel, so I was carrying the tight end a little bit, and I was going to drop him to the safety that was over above. And then I just got my eyes back to the QB, and then the ball was right there. So I was like, oh, I got to get that. So I just picked it off, and it didn't feel real in the moment. And then I kind of just got up and started running. I didn't really know what I was doing. And then everyone was running the field, so it was a very cool moment.
The thing about Dylan Thieneman is that coming into the year, we knew that he was very highly regarded, and I hadn't honestly seen a lot of tape of him at Purdue, and you kind of just are waiting for, not that he hadn't been good, but that's an incredible play right there. He wasn't even supposed to be on that guy. He was guarding the guy that was in the flat, and he just read the eyes of the quarterback. It's just one of those instinct plays, and it's just one of those things where you get players like that. Like Bear Alexander has an incredible game up front. There's just all the right pieces are coming together for this team right now, it feels like.
Yep, absolutely. And the importance of that, Kim, remember, Oregon had failed on the 2-point conversion before. In the second overtime, you have to go for 2. So if he misses that, and if it's, or if Aller hits the guy on the down there and they go down and score, they're a 2-point conversion away from ending it. And the worst thing they can do is tie. If they score a touchdown, the worst thing they can do is get a third one, but they get it. So that was really, I thought, one to really get it in there. All right, well, it's amazing that 45 miles apart, we have what Oregon's doing and what Oregon State's doing. And we'll get a little bit into Oregon State next. We're going to have John Warren coming on to discuss the temperature in Corvallis, which it's raining here in Eugene, but not in the hearts of Duck fans. I do believe that the rain in Corvallis sums up the mood down there a little bit more. We will be right back. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show. That's on KNCU 92.7 Fox Sports Newport and KORE 102.9 and 1050 Fox Sports Eugene. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show on a Monday. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. And Justin, I feel like these last couple weeks, well, it's been fun to get to know some of the new guests that I didn't know. There's been some old home weeks. We had last week Mike Parker on. Mike and I started together at 1080 The Fan, or actually it wasn't even 1080 then, The Fan in Portland, KFXX. early 90s. We had Kerry Eggers on last week. I
Yeah.
told you Kerry was a mentor of mine going back to the 80s. And if you go back to the late 90s when I was a part-time prep reporter at the Oregonian, I would often share the top row of a rainy high school bleachers out at Westview or Glencoe or Jesuit with John Warren and his partner out there. So it is fun to welcome in somebody who's been a friend of mine for, we don't want to age either of us, but it's going probably past 2 decades and closer to 3. John, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's great to hear your voice, Steve, and see you in sports. I know you went on and did some other things after writing, so it's great to have you back.
You can take the sports out of the kid, but you can't or whatever they call it. You can kick him out of the newspaper business and into the financial planning business, but I still got to have a little hobby on the side. So I appreciate Woody and all the folks over here letting me do it and trying to pretend like I know what I'm doing on radio. Something that you've mastered over the past few years. So appreciate your fine work up there, and it's been great to chat with you and Mike Parker. So John, after another tough one with special teams meltdowns at the end, what's the temperature of the fan base up in Corvallis now?
Oh man, well, it's just worse than it was, in the weeks preceding. I think everybody was expecting losses at Oregon and Texas Tech, but they sure weren't against Fresno State. And then just this last week,
Houston,
even Cal, that was a game where you lose by a couple of touchdowns, but you give them up early, and you shouldn't have. And I think not as many people think that Cal is winnable as I think so. I think Oregon State should be 3-2 right now, based off of I think the talent.
Yeah,
and it's just not. And today's Trent Bray press conference was interesting. There were, Bill Oram from the Oregonian. Some people are talking. I wouldn't say he's getting heat, but a lot of people are talking about his articles and his direct line questioning a couple of weeks ago to Trent Bray. Should you be the coach? Why do you think you should be the coach? These kinds of things, which in the West, you just don't hear that. Everybody's really nice in the West. You go to New York or some of these bigger places, they're all over it, aren't they, Steve? You've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
And so a couple more guys picked it up. There was a couple of writers today, Ryan Clark for the Oregonian and others were asking some of that. And Trent didn't blink. There was no tension with the questions, and the questions weren't about him. They were about, if he's going to make a change, in coaching at the with the special teams.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, for continuity for the athlete, he doesn't want to make an in-season change, but it was, I don't know, it was just kind of it was almost like, at the end of the year, it's a different story, but we're not going to do it in season. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, the whole thing was just tense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a realization here that there's a serious problem. And so I said on the postgame call-in show Friday night, I said, look, there's just no two ways about it. The special teams is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever's fault it is, bottom line, it's a mess and it needs to be dealt with. So, long answer to your question, the fan base is not happy. Now, it's better to have an angry fan base than it is to have indifference. And we haven't gotten there yet, but that's a scary place to get to, because once you hit that, as you guys know, it's pretty much done.
Yeah. No, and Steve and I were just talking today about different teams that are in our lives that we're just totally apathetic about it, and it's just not a good place to be. But you mentioned those special teams errors and just how it's been this season, and I can't help but think that it's emblematic of some greater problems that are happening right now in this program, because not being able to get a field goal in overtime as close as you are, isn't that just like a fundamentally flawed football team at that point?
I think so. I think that, you're onto something there. It tells me a lot. If you can't fix something that at least 3 times has cost you a win. 3 times it's cost you a win. And, you're exactly right. There's something wrong there, because it's not just fixing one thing. First, against Cal, you had all these dumb penalties, especially the substitution penalty.
Right.
That started the game. You make a great defensive stop, a administrative penalty happens on confusion and substitution and all that. They get the ball back, go down and score, and, that had a lot to do with them winning that game. I know it was the first drive of the season, basically, but it meant a lot. Then you have, and then on that same game, in special teams, you have really stupid, hurtful penalties. Okay? Now you move on to the next game, and, we saw what happened with the snapping. And then you move on to Texas Tech. Now, you're going to lose that game anyway, but still, it doesn't help you that you have the false starts before the weather delay, but you come back from the weather delay and you have a few things wrong with special. The snapping. You can only snap short snaps. Even in this game on fourth down, there was some pooch kicks, but there were also punts. There were punts against Oregon. They got that fixed. Now you've got problems where you can't block right for a field goal, or your kicker gets hurt, and your backup kicker is forced to kick. And on the last kick, where the Beavers could have perhaps won the game, they get 4 or 5 guys in there that could have blocked that kick, and it just went into everybody's knees anyway. It was a disaster. So when you have more than 3 or 4 things that need to be fixed, then yes, that's emblematic of bigger problems.
Yeah, and I think, and too, looking at last week, and give them credit. They were 0-4. They were getting beat up, and they come out and they take a lead over a Big 12 team. But then when that falls apart, now you start thinking, if they could have beaten the Fresno State and the Houston, we're having a different discussion here. Maybe there's one that gets away, but the other two, you're still looking at this schedule thinking, hey, 6-6, 7-5. But the way it's turned out now, we're sitting here thinking, what is it, 1? Can they get to 2? And you just wonder in that locker room, like I say, they really held with it last week. And then when another collapse comes, and now you got a long road trip to a weird place, this almost feels like it could kind of be the bellwether game. You drop this one against, an App State, and it can still win 6, then you really start wondering if the team's, still into it. So credit to Bray for last week, but I think we're going to find out this week, too, if he's still got this group with him. If he does, I think they can win the game. And, again, you win one, just the way that schedule's front-loaded, you can start putting together, hey, maybe there's 4 or 5 wins out there. But the more of these ones, especially the disappointing ones that get away, you just wonder how long these guys hang with it.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're right, Steve. It is a bellwether game because you're not favored right now, 1.5 right now for App State, but which is ridiculous. That's not a good sign because on paper you should be way better than this team. Granted, you have to go a long way and play in their place, but you should be better than this team. And that's a game that a lot of people, virtually everybody, would have marked on the calendar as saying a victory on that one. And the beginning of Houston would have been one too. But just the beginning of like you said, the front-loaded schedule. Now you're on the backside. You start winning some games. You should have won some games prior to this. You shouldn't go into that game 0-5. And so if you go into that game and you're not successful, that was not something that was counted on. So that could cause all kinds of problems. And I was really surprised to see that they're 1.5-point dogs in this game. This one. This one actually has a lot more importance than it should have. Yeah,
with the way of that one there. With Malik Murphy, there was the Civil War was a rough one in a lot of ways there, but he comes back and throws for 200. Trent Walker, who didn't do much at all in the Civil War, comes back. What's been kind of the take on what they've gotten from Malik Murphy? Does it feel like, there's kind of been him and Gunderson taking some time to get to know each other, maybe him getting to know the receivers? Because it seems like it's a talented guy, but it just hasn't fully come together yet. Is there a feeling that this offense can still kind of get together, or does it feel like almost separate parts?
No, well, Coach Bray thinks it can, and there hasn't been a lot of questions to him. We only get one opportunity for questions, and that's on Mondays, which is really more of a what happened on Saturday rather than it is what's coming up. But There hasn't been a lot of even questions about that. There was today for the first time about play calling, and he says nope, they're gonna keep it going the way it is. And he also said that he hurt his hand, and that's the reason why he couldn't run at the end there. And they brought in Jabari Johnson to try on that 4th and 1, and it was disastrous. But he said that he couldn't go yesterday, that Malik Murphy couldn't go yesterday with that hand. It would be Jabari Johnson as the guy who would start in that case, and I can't remember who he said would back him up. But there hasn't been a lot of discussion about Malik and how that's going, but I can tell you there's been a lot of calls and some comments from the fan base saying they're really disappointed in this guy. I've been on record as saying he's been a disappointment. Virtually every pass is either 3 feet over the receiver's head or down around the ankles. And there are some incredible plays, but a lot of times he throws into, double and triple coverage. And when a catch is made, you go, oh, nice pass. Mm-hmm. But when 4 or 5 of them are knocked down and occasionally intercepted, you go, where's he going with that? And so, no, I think right now there's disappointment.
Yeah.
And I just want to at least talk about, if there's one bright spot from this game, we got to talk about Cornell Hatcher Jr. because I don't want to see claim out of nowhere, but he kind of came out of nowhere a little bit in this game, and he had a huge game, 93 yards and a touchdown. Just had that sort of spark to him. How big was that just to have, a guy like that? I don't know if there's been a guy like that this season who's kind of just raised the expectation, I guess, more than it was coming into the season like that.
No, it was great. It really was. And honestly, in this game, obviously you could see when the Beavers were up, 14 points all the way. Most of the way they were up in this game against Houston, and they're up all the way to the 6-minute mark, and Houston comes back, and then there's the total collapse. For most of that game, there was a lot of really nice things, especially defensively and whatnot. But he was a bright spot, and I have to admit, I know I'm gonna admit something here. He was asked, Coach Bray was asked about him and if he kind of is the guy to take over, and I don't remember his answer. It was a pointed question if he's going to be the featured running back now, and I don't remember. Part of why is because I was doing a show and engineering the show.
Listen, I totally get it. Totally get it.
Yeah, I was looking at things and making sure, it was just the one time when in the middle of the whole thing where I was checking on the equipment rather than listening, and I don't remember his answer. So I don't want to misquote him.
Can you at least say at this point that, with Anthony Hankerson, his running style is clearly more physical, where Hatcher was getting to the outside? Does he just maybe fit this team more than Hankerson does at this point, even though Hankerson's, we know, a good running back?
Well, he's just faster to the hole, I think. And Saladin Allah is a guy that I thought is faster to the hole as well. Right. But Hankerson, there's so much to be said for having 2 running backs at Oregon State. And you go back to Jamar Jefferson and Damian Martinez, and you can go even further back than that, where there was always one guy that was the main guy, but, man, that backup was really good. And, for last year it was Jam Griffin and Hankerson and Damian Martinez, Jam Griffin, and then it was, now it is who it is. With Saladin, I don't know if Saladin's hurt or what. We do not learn. We do not hear about. We don't know about any injuries or availabilities.
Yeah.
I don't know why Hatcher was playing and why Saladin Allah was not, because we can only speculate, well, they must have seen something in practice because he's getting all these carries. And normally that would be Saladin Allah's carries. I like that kid. He is smooth, and he gets through the hole, and he runs fast. Hank is a guy. Anthony Hankerson is a guy for the powerful, short type stuff, but man, for speed and just smoothness, it's always been Saladin Allah. But now it's Hatcher. He looked fantastic. So we always knew that there were deep room from fall camp. There were 6 players deep, but I didn't think they went as deep as Hatcher in getting as many carries and being so successful he was. That was a big surprise.
And a cool story, too, that, he's the nephew of Armin Hatcher, so there's some deep Beaver ties in that one, too.
Yeah, a little bit of legacy there. That always helps, and, not a lot of people know that, and that's pretty cool, too. So it's a positive. It'll be interesting to see who gets the bulk of the carries in this game coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, they got Appalachian State this week. Last thing, John, before I let you go, there's a lot of talk before the year about Bray taking over the defense. Has that shown much improvement, do you see, with him kind of being more hands-on there?
At first, it was not. I thought personally that his attention was being diverted or split or whatever. It wasn't any better. They were missing tackles. They were doing a lot of really bad things. And in the last game and a half, it's really looking a lot better, lot better. And so hopefully he's getting a chance to let go more of the CEO stuff and get back into actual coaching, because this last game made you feel a lot better about the defense than the first few games, because they were not good.
All right. He is the judge, John Warren, bringing us all the news from Corvallis, where it sounds like the temperature is not the fan base is, like I say, still involved. When they get to apathetic, then you've lost them, but there's still just more anger at this point. John, again, it was great to catch up with you. Appreciate your friendship through the many decades, and appreciate you coming on and giving us the report from Corvallis. Maybe they get one this week and things start to turn, but either way, we'll chat with you again soon.
You got it. Thanks, Steve. Great to talk with you again. Justin, thanks, man, and we'll do it again sometime.
All right, and that is the great judge, John Warren from Corvallis, giving you the latest on Oregon State. All right, when we come back, we will chat again about Oregon. We'll have a kickoff time for the Indiana game. We'll let you know how early you can start tailgating for that one. This is the Danny and Justin Show on KNCU 92.7 Fox Sports Newport and KORE 102.9 and 1050 Fox Sports Eugene. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny, who is down in Louisiana, I think, this week on some business. So
out in the bayou.
Danny's down there going through the gumbo. But I'll be here through Wednesday. You're going to have to find somebody to help you out on Thursday, and then Danny comes back Friday, and then my long run is over here. But it's been fun. I appreciate everybody who has called in and listened. It's been a fun couple weeks. Last week we had the game to talk about. Now we get a bye week, so we'll have to, fortunately it actually gives us a few days to kind of go through all that happened in the Oregon-Penn State game, and so we'll continue to do that. Much thanks to John Warren, like I say, a longtime friend of mine, for coming on and chatting about the Beavs. When you're interviewing people about the Beavs, it's getting harder. You just kind of start, it's like when it's Groundhog's Day and every day tends to be the same thing, every game tends to be, it's hard to come up with sort of like, hey, last week it seemed like this was different. This week it seemed like it's just sort of like, kind of this again, and it's credit to John, who's like you say, hosts a daily show up there and a post-game call-in show, and these aren't always the easiest times to handle those jobs, so good for him. This week, Beavers are at Appalachian State, for those who don't know, 12:30 our time, so your Jerry's Home Improvement Game Day show with Brian Beban will be at 10:30, and then everybody in this town and Corvallis at 12:30 is going to go to the TV and see if they have ESPN Plus, because this one is on ESPN Plus. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I have it at my home. Even if I have it, I'm not 100% sure. I'm blocking out 3.5 hours on a Saturday to watch this team, but that will be the game day.
It's getting harder.
It is. So 10:30 this week for the game day for you and Brian. The following week, turns out your game day is going to start at the same time. We found out today that the Indiana-Oregon game is the CBS 12:30 game. So that's good news in terms of having another national audience. Both Indiana and Oregon have a bye this week. So where we went through that whole last week, was it an advantage to have the bye, to not have the bye?
Well, turns out it wasn't an advantage.
Turns out it wasn't much of an advantage. Turns out I was right. It was all that fighting against Oregon State that really got them ready to roll. But Oregon, Indiana, we know it's 12:30. So if you're a tailgater, I think gates will open at 7, so can get there going early. But I'm excited for that one. I think that'd be a good game. Indiana, after the week before when they blew out Illinois, Indiana came in and won at Iowa, which is a good place to win, but it wasn't quite as convincing as some of the others had been. But Kurt Cignetti stays undefeated. I think they're up to number 8. Oregon's up to number 2 in the top 25. So this sets up as pretty clearly, since they both have a bye week this week. I'm assuming it's going to mean that they are both top 10 teams, unless
there's going to be 2 SEC teams that they stick up there
unless Notre Dame and LSU both win by 1 point, because then they'll make sure to jump Indiana next week and we'll move them down. But pretty sure we're going to be able to say that this is a top 10 matchup. And we got some time to marinate on it, but I'm excited to see what that looks like. Indiana, to me, last year was a bit, I don't want to say a fraud, but they just didn't beat anybody to get there. Illinois, which turns out they're pretty good. They came back and beat USC. I think the Indiana team's good. We haven't seen them go on the road and win a big one. Last year was Ohio State on the road. They couldn't get it. That's kind of maybe the next thing that Cignetti has to do to prove that, hey, we're here, is to do what Oregon did last week. I saw today that they're 8-point under or 10-point favorites. Oregon is. That sounds about right to me. But I think at first glance, Indiana-Oregon should be fun.
No, it should be. And I think that Indiana, I don't think they're really a top 10 team. I probably think they're more of a top 15 team. Okay. That's probably where
all those SEC teams that you have ahead of them?
No, I'm still sort of a little bit wait and see on Indiana. I mean, I agree. I think that having them beat Illinois the way they did, and then Illinois beating USC, and there's no transitive property or anything like that, but I think that kind of proves that, okay, Indiana is not like a joke at this point. And Illinois certainly isn't as. It wasn't the fact that Illinois was just that bad, just the fact that they were able to kind of come up with a victory there. And now they have to have a real test like Oregon did last week, like you mentioned. Indiana, of course, got Fernando Mendoza, who I remember the start of his career, which was against Oregon State, where we actually had Justin Wilcox on that week, and we had talked to him that week about, hey, like which one? There were two quarterbacks. I can't remember their names, but there were two guys not named Fernando Mendoza that all week long we were talking about. And then on that Saturday night, they flip out Fernando Mendoza, and I think he had like 350 yards against the Beavers. Yeah. And ever since then, he's kind of just taken off, and here he is in Indiana. He's a really good quarterback. He's kind of being talked about as that top first-round type of quarterback now. So that's the kind of matchup that you look forward to as an Oregon team, I'm sure, facing off against a great quarterback. I think he might be a better quarterback than Drew Aller. I mean, that's not a hot take, I don't think, at this point.
No, I don't think so.
So Indiana, a team that I think certainly is a more for-real team than last year. I think that Oregon's, I don't think you're, scared if you're Oregon coming into this game. I think it's a game you probably expect to win, especially based on what the line is. But I think it's super fun that we have a matchup that, when I was talking to Ahmed Fareed last week, just talking about the Penn State game, is one thing that he said that really stood out to me is just one of the biggest impressions of this season is that you just can't count on what last year was being what this year is. Yeah. And it's just it was a perfect example of Indiana just being that team last year that we thought all year long, and we were kind of right about them, that they just really hadn't beaten anybody. And they were doing things against teams that weren't good that you think that good teams do. But ultimately, when it came down to the rubber beating the road, they weren't that good of a team. But this year, it seems like they're a little bit more for real. Oregon gets another opportunity to top 10 matchup. I think that's super duper exciting. All of a sudden now this is an interesting game for recruits to go to, I think, more than maybe you saw before the season. There weren't too many games on Oregon's schedule that you could say, oh, well, all the recruits are want to go this one. I mean, the USC game, I think people are going to want to go see. But I think it's super fun. I mean, I think it's a perfect time for a bye week after Oregon has this big emotional victory. Now they can really embrace where they are as a team. And I'm sure Dan Lanning's going to do whatever he can to move the team forward and just kind of stay in the moment. He's very good at that, obviously. So I'm just really excited as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. It reminds me a little bit of, and this isn't maybe fair because we just saw Indiana blow Illinois away. Last year, Illinois was like top 20 when they came to Autzen. And I remember looking and thinking, that doesn't look to me like a team that's, right there with Oregon.
You're just not a fan of Illinois.
Illinois. I'd like to see them, maybe I'm not a big Bielema fan or don't believe in him. But so it reminds me of that, to kind of where it was like, hey, top 25 teams coming in, but we were all kind of like, and then Oregon blows them away. And it's like, maybe that Illinois. I could see that being Indiana. Again, Kurt Signetti will listen to the show. Somebody will send it to him, and he'll use it as fire because that dude.
I hope he does.
That dude likes motivating himself. He loves the doubters and all that. And but I don't see. I would be stunned if they came in here and this was a game like last week with put up a performance like Oregon did on the road last week. This feels like one where it's two good teams, but eventually the better team kind of wears them down and ends up like that, to where Indiana hits home with probably their worst loss of the last 2 years type situation.
And if this was the week after, if there wasn't any bye, I would be a little bit more concerned. You're coming off of an emotional high. Now the expectations go from, coming into the year with Oregon, I think that on the low end, people thought, hey, maybe you could have a couple losses. And now I think the expectation is that you're going to be undefeated. You're going to go to the Pac-12 or the Big. I did it. The Big Ten championship game. It's still been 2 years, and I'm still doing it. The Big Ten championship game, potentially. That's what that last week did. As much as anything, it lined you up for the inside track for that. Now you're not facing anybody on your schedule that you're going to be a underdog to. So I think it's great that they have a bye week coming into it.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I think it's interesting. We talked with Yogi Roth last week about kind of that bye week, and he talked about how, like for Penn State, it comes at a really good time because they played 3 games. You can kind of go in, or 4 games, I guess, 3 games. And you can kind of reset the depth chart. You can go in and have kind of a week off to where you might want to tinker. Hey, this guy moves from the 3s to the 2s. Maybe we want to move this guy into the starting lineup. This is the week Oregon gets a chance to do that. Now, I don't think where they're at you're going to see anything massive, but I do think, A, it gets you a chance to heal some guys up, and B, it does give you a chance to kind of go back through that depth chart, or as Oregon coaches in recent years would like to call it, an organizational chart, and kind of move things around. And maybe one area where that comes in, and you discussed it, was running back. Maybe
I was just about to say.
Maybe this is the week where they kind of do have a clear, hey, look, there's been 6 guys been playing a lot, and it's worked out. None of these guys have been getting, the workhorse 25 carries a game. Maybe they do. Maybe they see in Hill what you see and think, hey, this is a guy who, instead of giving him these 8 to 10, we need to bump him up to the 16 to 18. Maybe Noah takes this. Maybe we see a little bit more of that. And again, along with healing up. So I think you're right that it's a good week for it, especially between two really good teams. You have a physical game. Much don't even count about the fact that you had to fly back Saturday night from 3,000 miles away. And I do think it works out well for them in that sense.
And maybe Mekhi Hughes will show up to the game. Maybe he'll be there. I don't know.
He'll be there. I don't think anything we've seen leads us at this point. I think he rises up the
No,
depth chart.
I think that Mekhi Hughes this has not gone the way that he has planned. But for Oregon, I mean, just like you said, they've had 6 guys that have been able to contribute, and so you're going to be willing to do that. Maybe D.R. Hill is one of those guys that is the guy that's really great with 10 touches, but can't be the guy that has 15 to 20 touches. Yeah, there's guys that are like that. But whenever I saw him getting carries, it was like he looked like the most explosive guy in the field. He certainly, the numbers showed it. I mean, he's averaging 10 yards a carry as it is right now. And they're always going to use a couple guys. I mean, even when they had Bucky, it was Bucky and Noah Whittington. And then there was Jordan James that was the third guy. So they've always had 2 to 3 guys. But I think it's been really interesting this year how they've had 7.
Yep. Kenyon Barner and LaMichael James back in the day.
Exactly.
Ricky Whittle and Sean Burwell for old people like me. But I do think it's interesting because we would often have, when I was covering Oregon, I feel like often during preseason you would have a depth chart like that where you're like, wow, there's 5, 6 guys. And you would ask, and no matter, I swear almost without fail, the running backs coach would always say, probably 3 max that we want to use. We want to have our workhorse and maybe a couple others. You start getting down to the 5th and the 6th guy. Now maybe you're not using some of your top guys. That was always sort of the line that you would hear from the running backs coaches and even from coordinators was, maybe 3 you want to really kind of rely on. It's nice to have that 4th and 5th as maybe you can come in here and there. But I've never seen a team to where, like I say, Jordan Davison, who's, converts anytime there's a short yardage situation. Mm-hmm. Whittington's the veteran who had a great start to the season. You mentioned Hughes is the transfer who came in with the high expectations. Jane Lamar's looked really good.
He's kind of just like the forgotten guy.
Yeah, but all these guys have really performed, and so maybe this is a week where but I don't know that, again, and you might be right too on Hill, that maybe some of these guys, they want to keep them all fresh and don't feel like this guy needs to, you have the old Reuben Drones type where you feel like, or even Derrick Henry in the NFL where you feel like, that 20th carry, he's getting stronger and the defense is wearing down type situation. I don't think any of these guys are that. This might be, hey, we want, for Hill to be at his strength. If he takes 5, 6 hits in a game and, tackled that many times, maybe it starts to wear him down. Let's keep him in that and you can kind of move some things around. So I do think it's interesting. Again, I wouldn't see any major things coming up, but the bye week now does give Dan Lanning a chance to at least kind of take a breath and look and see who's done what and see if you're adjusting that chart at all.
No, totally. And all these running backs do different things as well. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to have Jordan Davison be that short yardage back and to have D.R. Hill be that change of pace back when you need some explosive plays. Jaden Lamar is kind of the guy that you need 4 yards. He's going to get you 4 yards. Noah Whittington's been super great this year. So I agree. I think that as much as anything, it's a great opportunity to reevaluate your team after you play a really top-level opponent. So I don't know. I just think the way this is all playing out for Oregon, it's going 100% according to plan.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. This is crazy.
Before the year, and you mentioned some of this, the over-under was 10.5, and I said I'd take the under because I think Penn State's a tough one, and then you figure there might be one more along the way that you have a letdown. If I had that 10.5 over ticket right now, I'd feel pretty good about things because I look at it, and again, I don't really see an L on there, assuming everybody stays healthy, and I don't want to jinx anything, but you look at it, and just the way Oregon's playing and the way that Dan Lanning has this team motivated, finds sort of, even when you go to a whiteout, he turns the whiteout again into the canvas and talks about how,
unbelievable. He's a quote machine on Saturday.
And damn, it just always works, there's that post-game video of him where he's just basically shaking out there, and you see that's where guys that play for him really enjoy it. And so like I say, if I'm looking at that schedule after that, if you're one of them who bet the 10.5 on the over, hang on to that ticket. I think you got a pretty good chance of hitting it. All right, that's going to wrap up our Monday. We got a couple more days here this week, Justin. Mm-hmm. We'll have some guests who can help discuss a little bit more of Oregon Penn State. We got into it a little bit today. Next couple of days, we'll probably get a little bit more into Oregon Penn State, wrapping it up, kind of what it means before we kind of fast forward and start looking ahead to the Indiana game. And maybe check some Blazers, too. We had Blazer Media Day today, so we might get a little bit of that bit as well. But this is Steve Mims. I'm filling in for Danny. This is the Danny and Justin Show on KORE. 102.9, 1050 Eugene, 92.7 KNCU, Fox Sports Newport. See you tomorrow.